Good morning. This is my good friend and colleague, Paul Kirschbaum. I'm Leslie Wooten. It's 10:33. Let's get into it. Today's topic, maintaining a weekly inventory. So Paul, first question, yes or no, conducting inventory is essential to a successful business?
Is conducting inventory essential?
Mm-hmm.
It's a trick question. Is it essential? No.
Haha.
I'm gonna hear it on this one.
Yeah. So why no? Why is it not essential?
Well, I think you should do it? And is it essential are two different things.
Yeah.
All
You
the
said
big
trick question totally set you up. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Because either way, you could have berated me. To be successful, you do not technically need to have a weekly inventory or monthly inventory. And that's another argument: is it weekly or monthly?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Some
We'll get into all that. Yeah.
Some high end stuff daily. But is it essential? No. To be successful, no. Is it highly recommended? Yes.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely lunatic to not do an inventory, and we'll get into how often an inventory should be done. At the very basic, at the very base, you should absolutely be doing inventory. And if you only do it monthly or quarterly, at least you're doing it. You got to be doing it. But is it essential to a business to be successful? No, it's not. And we'll get into some of the why behind it. But let's go even further back. So real quick, let's talk about the basics of what inventory is. It's more than just counting the product on hand. What would you say inventory is?
That's a good question, because a lot of people, when they want to know, like, when we do inventory, the first thing I ask is why. Why do you want to do inventory? Is this something for your numbers? Is this something for your tracking? Is this something for operational loss, which is theft? Why do you want to do it? And then that will come into, what we should do and how, because there are different levels of it. You can go super detailed. You can be very just a big picture, but it depends on why you want inventory in the first place. Though you should have it anyway, you should have some form of it, but just how deep you're going to go is probably the why behind it.
So what are some of the different whys? The first one that comes to my mind, and of course I do a lot of learning development, and the HR part of it is accountability. I'm going to let you get into some of the numbers and details there. But when I think of inventory, I think of the operators who are doing it, and one, they should be looking at their own numbers, but the people who are looking at the numbers to get a good idea of how that operator is running their business. I also see it as a development tool. As you're moving an hourly associate into a salaried or management position, that introduction to the business side of it, whether they can do it or execute it or understand it or not, I really feel that it gives them that sense of promotion right there, that, oh, I'm part of this count. And for those of us who have probably done far too many inventories, I don't know that it's a privilege to be doing inventory anymore. But you get that young upcoming junior manager and you introduce them to the inventory and they see the business inside and out. And I really think it's an eye-opening thing for young managers to start off in, so that they can see what's happening and learn how that is. So I see it as a development tool, but that's not this conversation. What are some of the whys behind doing an inventory?
There's a couple. I mean, the big one is one that I run into the most is theft, operational losses. Sorry, to be PC.
Yeah, I hope somebody's mad that we said theft.
Theft. I think that's one. Another one is PARs, and that's a rabbit hole, because if somebody says I want you to do inventory just for PARs, there's other ways you could do that anyway. So. I think it's a waste of time, to be honest with you. But for forecasting your PMIX, and for forecasting your sales, and you need to know what you've done. And having an inventory kind of tracks a lot of that stuff. You'd be surprised how many operators don't understand what their biggest sellers are. They think they do, but when they actually see a PMIX, And then they're like, oh my goodness. And then you can actually take that as almost a direct link to your inventory. I know that's later on in our conversation, but that is like tracking your numbers, is knowing, you know, what a difference between actual, your actual variances,
Yeah.
or knowing, you know, what your theoretical variance is. And that's where technology comes in to help with that. But you still, no matter what you do, even if you want just pars, you still got to count your inventory.
Yeah, creating that A versus T, and the P mix, and that is absolutely something that we need to dive into further. But real quick, so let's stay on the topic of just why inventory, what inventory is, and you mentioned the high volume item. So when you're doing an inventory, do you need to do counts on, let's say, products that spoil, or let's say products that aren't your high dollar or even no dollar? What about refills? Like if you're willing to give out soda refills or tea or coffee to staff or customers when they come in for a free refill, napkins, straws, do we need to count all that as well as part of the inventory if there's a no cost item?
I track everything.
Yeah.
That's just me. If you're gonna do it, spend extra 5 minutes and track everything. Now, this is where it gets a little complicated. I understand the why behind it, and this is where sometimes that why behind it is theoretical or actual, because that is where the split is. If you want to know the actual cost of everything, you need to track everything. If you just want theoretical food cost, then you just track food.
Yeah.
But what about liquor? And then what about dry goods? Really, if it's on your P&L, you need to track it. And if soda is part of it, yes. Now, do you need to put a button in and hit refill every $0 refill every time someone wants a refill, so you can track it in the front end of it, so you can match the numbers in the back end of it? That's up to you. To me, that's not worth the time and effort for your server or, you know, your bartender to do that. But I could build that into it. You can kind of do look at your inventory, look at your sales, where's that missing link, and use that as your kind of filler, you know, or your template going forward.
And it all comes down to why you want to do it. If you're trying to define those numbers, how well defined do you want? Because if you're looking for the big ticket items, then you could inventory the big ticket items. I had a group that I was working with that asked me to come in and help them get to the next level to open a new location. And they were having a hard time getting a loan from the bank. They knew that they were successful, and they were bringing money. They had plenty of guests coming in, and they were doing really well, but they could not prove it to the bank. So one of the first things that we did was designed inventory for them, and they resisted the entire way. And this mom and pop shop, you know, is a father and son running it. They did not want to do inventory, and I built it all out for them, and we went for the numbers, and they ended up opting to take the higher cost loan for a new location rather than do inventory at all.
And that to me is pure insanity, but because it's not that difficult if you want to do it on the basic. Now, let's be honest, when I first started out, I didn't do inventory. It was in my head, which is the biggest farce. You know, I knew what everything was. That again is another farce. You know, things slip through the crack. I talked to basically a large international brokerage that basically what they do is buy restaurant chains, small regional restaurant chains that want to kind of break into the next or go into franchising or get bought out by a bigger company. There's two things they look at. Number one, well, other than your profitability. Number one, do you do inventory? Number two, how many food service providers you use. Right. Because if you're using more than one, if that more than one is 20%, 10%, it's okay. But 80% should come from one provider, and the reason is deals. When you sign up with a food service provider, you get a better deal. They're going to get a rebate. You're going to get this and that, and they don't want to touch you if you don't. If you have 5 different purveyors, and yes, I understand, like you want to price shop, but you're not saving money. People think they are, but they're not. I don't know why I went on a tangent that has nothing to do with inventory, but
I think it's great advice to consider. That is one thing. If you're doing inventory, you got to know when you're bringing product in and when product's going out. So all those are part of getting it taken care of. And if you're bringing product in and checking it in over and over, you want that consistency. And that's a great point that I've never thought of, is the deals that you're bringing in from food purveyors is something that a loan officer might consider. That's something that a bank should be looking at, like, hey, are they maximizing their business profit? Which is, I would think that it's important to anybody who's even considering opening a restaurant, let alone a second restaurant. And I'm with you that it'd be crazy not to want to do inventory. And the justification was, well, we're successful already. We don't need to do that. And more power to you. If you're happy where you are, I'd promote that over anything else. Just don't try to grow the business. Be happy where you are, because you're going to be right there.
Well, and let's be honest, sales hide all evils.
Sure.
If you know that's the part of it. If you're so busy, you're like, well, I'm so busy, I don't need to. Well, look in this climate, you're going to have to be running a tighter ship, especially if you only have 50%, 75% occupancy rate. Allowed to by state law or state code, whatever, due to the COVID. And then another one is, and I think and this is the PAR thing that gets a little bit, where do you put the PAR counting? But inventory is money. I learned this in the wine business. All that wine that's sitting in your basement's a lot of money. Okay, it's a lot of sitting money, but so is your food, your freezer, your walk-in, your dry storage. All that stuff takes up space. That's why when they do real estate, they do it by the square foot. So your food takes up the square foot. And if you're ordering stuff wrong or counting things wrong, don't do an inventory, you don't know what you have, and you keep ordering something you have a lot of, you're just taking up space that's is wasting money, in my thing. You can have something else there. You got another thing on the menu. You can have another wine. You could have another drink. I think it's really important. And this is just not the food. Tell me how important liquor inventory is.
Oh my goodness! I think it's the most important, because if you're free pouring or jigger pouring, like you're measuring by an ounce and a quarter.
Yeah.
The entire product line, the entire main product, the money maker that you have in that drink, and that ounce and a quarter, as soon as it goes to an ounce or an ounce and a half, you're off by 25%, like quickly.
Yeah, and that's why all the corporate restaurants make you use a jigger, or you get to pass a pour test every week, where you can, if you're allowed to free pour.
Yeah, I think that's another conversation that we should have as well, and I think that'll be a hot topic, because I've got some absolute convictions about free pouring versus jigger pouring and the importance of it, because I know who usually is trying to instill one way or the other, and I don't know that they're always in the building. But this topic, what I want to go into is a P-mix. So first of all, tell us what a P-mix is. We keep saying that word.
P-mix is a product mix. Basically, it tells you what you are selling out of your restaurant, and by either the count or by the dollar amount. By the way, I always do the dollar amount.
Inside tip, yeah. So do you need specific software to get a P-mix or even do inventory?
You need a POS system to make it easy. Yeah, you could do one by hand, but the people that are usually doing, don't have a POS system or a point of sale system or a computer system or even a register, which is rare. Don't do an inventory, so it's it's a mute discussion. But you need the basic stuff. You need you can run it off of most POS systems, if not all. And then on the registers, the ticket registers, it's a little harder, but you still can do it.
Yeah, I imagine not having the POS or anything to track food coming in and out, doing inventory, still totally agree with doing it. It's going to feel a lot more like that open food button, where I know that we sold something and I know that we or counting something, but it's going to be more of a count of here's how much we paid for product, here's how much we made, and here's what the difference is. So it's going to be a lot more lump sum on everything, kind of just an open item on your P&L, which is terrifying, but at least you've got something going. So I totally agree. You got to get some sort of software in there, and you can set that up really, really easily, even through a Google Doc if you had to. So I've built them on Excel spreadsheets. It's not difficult, but yeah, you're absolutely right. You got to have some way of tracking the items that you're selling, not just everything as a whole.
It comes down to your PMix and your inventory. It really just comes from one filter, and that's from the top, and that's your P&L.
Mm-hmm.
And if I give advice on anything, is just master categories. Whatever your categories are up here, make sure the same categories on your POS system and on your inventory. It makes your life a lot easier when you want to run numbers.
So I love that. That's a lot of how to do it, but let's get back to the main topic of this, which is how often you should do it. And let's start with often being none. So let's consider a business that's doing well. Let's say that you are doing well. You've got great sales. You're feeling good about the money in the bank, and you're cruising along, and you're very comfortable. Why do you need to do inventory? What happens if you don't do inventory? Isn't that just an extra cost of labor when you're already doing well?
I understand that point of it being an extra cost of labor. Really, for me, it's accountability.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I strive is personal accountability. And I think not only is that's a personal thing for me, but also you need it for your restaurant, especially if you have multiple units. Accountability is huge, and accountability, trackability, you need to know where things are going. This is, you look at any other business, they do inventory from supermarkets, which are much bigger and much harder to do, to like an auto parts store, how they keep everything tracked so they know what they have and what they can sell.
Right.
There are different reasons to do it. If you do none, I tell people just start with your COP and then go from there.
COP,
Center of plate. Center of plate. Usually that's your higher end stuff. So start with your perishable meats, expensive stuff, your seafood restaurant, your scallops, stuff like that, and start at the bar. If you don't have it at the bar, start at the bar because I'm telling you that's going to be the biggest leak, I guess you could say.
So as you're looking for these leaks or opportunities or whatever PC term you want to put to it, you're looking for areas of correction where you need to make a quick business decision because you see that you're missing out on something. Let's talk about a monthly inventory. If you're doing a monthly inventory, is it too late to correct the issues that you find?
No, it's not too late. It's never too late. If you do, it's never too late. It's better to do at certain times. Is the weekly inventory necessary for all places? No, it's not at all. In corporate America, restaurants, they do monthly unless there's an issue. Once they see an issue, one issue, the manager's got to do a weekly one every Sunday, usually every Sunday night, usually roughly, depending on the concept. That we had to do it. And until our numbers stayed, there's no opportunity for improvement, I guess you could say. I think a lot of places start off weekly, but in general, I think most places do monthly. They kind of balance the labor versus the numbers or what they get behind it.
Now
am I answering your questions today, or am I just trying to skirt all?
You're killing the questions today. It's amazing, actually. I know this conversation is probably the most fixed, pointed answers you've given throughout the entire thing. Most of the time, I don't know what you're talking about, and I'm just excited to get to the next question, and finally get to the end of this conversation. But this time, you're actually answering it, and then I have to pay attention to the follow-up questions, which is putting the burden on me. So it's phenomenal. But since you answered that, this is one of the times where I just disagree. I really feel that we've got to push the industry, push the norm to a weekly inventory. And you're giving some flexibility to, if you're doing well, it can be monthly. And I think that goes into that same lax mentality of, well, the business is doing well, why do we have to do it all? Oh, well, we did well, we've got a reward of only doing it monthly. And I really think that you're giving yourself or giving your staff, giving your management team this false comfortability with, oh, we did well, so we don't have to do it, versus the mentality that I really would want to instill on our operators of, we're doing well because we do it weekly, because it's front of mind. Everything we do, we're thinking about those dollar signs. We're making sure that we're constantly watching prep every day. We're constantly looking at sales every day, not just hoping that inventory is well so that you only have to do it monthly. And maybe that's coming from the HR, the goal side of me, the learning and development, that it's beyond just the business numbers. If they're going well, I totally agree. And throughout this entire conversation, we've agreed that if it's totally going well and you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it, because you've got a successful business. Kudos to you, you've done it. But I really think that you got to get in that habit of weekly so that your operators, new and veterans, can see the immediate impact of sales versus the bottom line.
I disagree. I don't think a weekly is necessary unless there's issues. And I understand where you're coming from.
Sure.
And there's certain things I do agree with. Like at the bar, you need to do weekly. Your bar manager needs to do a weekly inventory.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's that balance. It's really a balance. Don't get your head bartender to do the inventory, please. Just for my own sanity.
So let's talk about that. So that speaks to me on labor. Like, this whole thing is about making sure that you have money. Why would you send your bartender or your hourly employees to do something that a salaried manager, somebody who's already included in the P&L as they are, somebody who's in charge of how these numbers work, who needs to manage these sales, not be the front line of sales, but manage them? Why are bartenders doing inventory? I'm 100% with you on that. Get your manager in there doing it.
Okay, so this is a little off topic, and I want to go back to the balancing, but balancing it, that's the reason why I want monthly, is it's a balance of it's a little morale thing, I guess you could say.
Okay.
And this kind of goes into this. Do you think your management should be bonused off your inventory or your percentages, your chef off of your what your food cost is?
Far more than guest complaints and Yelp reviews.
Okay, well then I think if you're getting bonus off of it, I think in general the management chefs are a little more on top of it on a day-to-day basis. So you don't really have to do it as much, I feel. Is that a little bit? Am I thinking of a little too?
Oh man, we're both arguing to do inventories and do them well. I think the only difference between me saying weekly versus monthly is better is because of that natural habit that somebody will start creating of, oh, it's monthly, and see it as a reward to do it fewer times versus part of my job to do it consistently. That's really it, not the financial benefits. But if it's going well, if everything's going well, I think we both agree you don't have to do inventory. You've got a business that's operating. Inventory helps you correct things. If everything's going well, inventory just proves it.
I just think that it depends on how deep your inventory goes. It
Sure.
really, it does. If you're doing the line, you're doing you're doing everything. I mean, if you're like, you make pico de gallo from scratch and you have to go in there, kind of, figure out what you have, tomatoes and onions and everything in there, that's a deep inventory. That it'd be very difficult to pull off operationally on a weekly basis. I think if starting from a brand new restaurant would have a better opportunity to do that. Trying to train your staff to start doing that, it's like pulling teeth. Sure.
You got to get management behind it, wanting that opportunity and wanting those results. So, final question: what is the easiest way to set up and sustain the inventory process?
Technology.
Okay.
And if you're using a large food service company, one of the big 5 or 6. Most of them have free software. And it's not expensive.
And with personnel, what's the easiest way to do it? You mentioned Sunday nights. Why Sunday nights or Monday mornings?
It's typically the slowest day, the slowest, slowest day. So you have a little more time. And if you're closed on a day, I mean, it's up to you if you want to bring somebody in on that closed day.
Sure.
That just depends. But yeah, you don't want to do it on a Friday or Saturday.
Yeah, you don't want to do it right before a day of large sales. You want to do it so that you can get a good count of what's coming up, because you're going to base your next orders on it. Am I wrong?
Oh yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you also, I mean, it's not only that. It's almost like it depends on when your next order is. Like, it's a lot of people get delivery, do an order on Monday for a Tuesday or a Sunday for, it just depends on your operation, and it depends on when your weekends. Does your weekend on a Sunday or a Monday?
Sure.
A lot of places end on Sunday night. That is done. So after they close on Sunday nights, when they do the inventory, because they already had the week behind them. So it just depends. I mean, it depends on each unit.
Fair, absolutely. Any final points?
No, I think there's a lot to this. I think getting into the PMix part of it and the actual versus theoretical, I think that's a big part. When somebody wants to get to the actual, variance between sales and what you have in inventory, it's a lot of work and a lot of technology and a lot of syncing and a lot of effort. And that's why I always say, why do you want to do inventory? We should do it, but how deep do you want to go? And what do you want the numbers? If you want actual numbers, why? Is there a reason behind that? Or is this just for to make sure the people upstairs are happy? That's a legit and valid point, but I think that knowing the why behind it, and I know I skirted that a little bit because I think there's so much why behind it, but knowing the why is really what level and how deep you're going to go into inventory, because you do not need to go down a rabbit hole, though I think you should still track everything.
Love it. Love it. Love it. I'm with you. I'm a huge advocate for doing inventory and creating those insights for the specifics that your business is doing right and wrong. And I'm with you. Like, if we chase A versus T, like, let's do it. Let's have an entire episode on just chasing those rabbit holes. And if you're watching and you've got a question about A versus T, or which software you should use, or how I could set this up on Google Docs, we'd be so happy to dive into some of those more detailed topics with you, instead of just a broad, yes, you should do inventory, here's why, and here's how. Leave us some comments about your thoughts and best practices. We'll review, we'll follow up. Be sure to follow the channel, show some love, and we'll keep coming back with some more strategies and insights to improve your operations. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.